This is interesting. Okay, so color code. Last week, how many of you pigeonholed everybody that you know? Are you? Tell me about your. I just wanted you to see people and see differences. You know, to see what makes this one this way or this one this way, and kind of be able to start identifying what's making certain people run, and then figuring out how you can get them to do what you'd like them to do where they are with their personality so that you can connect with them. So what experiences did you have? What did you see? What did you notice? Yeah?
I took this class a couple of years ago, and you actually gave us a paper copy of the test, and so I went home and made all my kids do it, and my husband, and myself. And so then this time I made them go all online and do it. And it was interesting because one of my kids is a red, and he is so red, it's not even funny. I don't think he got any whites, blues, or yellow answers. I went, oh, no wonder I struggle with him. And then I had my little ones. I kind of picked and chose which ones for them. And it's funny because I have one son that is like every color, just a mix, like 2 or 3 of each one. So there's not one that he's just a solid.
How old is he?
17. And so he's just not a solid. So he's sometimes the one I go, okay, how do I parent this child? Because he's a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white, a little bit of blue. Well, this time he came out more white and blue than he did yellow and red. He still had a little bit of those, but not nearly what he did when he took this. I think he was 14 when we did it the last time. And so it was just interesting to kind of see. And my husband is a blue and a red, and I'm a blue and a white. So sometimes I wonder, hey, you know, it's no wonder sometimes we do this and butt heads a little bit because he has that red come out and I have the white kind of come out. But it was just interesting to do my little ones who are almost 7. I have one that is majorly white, but she also has a ton of yellow in her, like her big sister. And so she's the one sometimes I'm just like, can you just take it seriously, please? And then I go, oh wait, she's yellow. Never mind. She's not going to. And then my little boy is solid blue all the way. And it just kind of cracked me up going, huh. You know, I wouldn't have pictured him. I thought he would be my more yellow. But I had to explain what some of the words were.
And you do when they're young.
And he went, oh, okay, I think I'm this. And so it was just interesting to finally kind of have them do it. But I worked with my red this week because he's the one that sometimes I want to bang my head against the cement wall. And so when I was trying to, I took one of the red things that was the correcting their behavior and really tried to rephrase how I tried to correct things with him this week. And occasionally he'd look at me like I was completely nuts. But I have just learned to not engage him when he tries to argue. I just walk away.
Good.
It drives him up the wall. Because then I'll go to my husband and try and get him involved. And I'm like, I handled it. I'm not doing, I'm not getting involved. Knock it off. But for me, it was nice not to feel like I was butting heads with him always.
Right.
And it took the power kind of away from him. Put it back with me, which was nice because I felt like our house ran just a little more smoothly than normal because I wasn't constantly trying to get him to do his homework or do his chores. I'm like, you know what, if you're not going to do them, then, I guess there's going to be consequences, and he doesn't necessarily like the consequences, but, it's that they're choosing to do something that they know is against, family rule, and
how they would love to choose their own consequences.
He doesn't like to. He'd rather it.
No, I just mean they would choose not to have any.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so I had kind of thrown it back. Well, okay, so what should your consequence be? And he just looks at me like, why are you making me choose? And I'm like, because I'm tired of choosing your consequences and having you throw it in my face that you don't like it. So now you're in charge. And he didn't like that much. He didn't like having the power shift.
He doesn't have anybody to argue with.
No.
That upsets him. Good job. Anybody else? Yes.
So last night at our family home evening, we had a lesson on the spirit of contention. We had some contention in our home, and feel like in the last few weeks, and I found an article in, well, it's a combination of contention and a child that's having a hard time expressing emotions, and so like he needs to take a breather and he's getting angry, and anyways, so I found this in the last couple weeks. I found this article in the Friend this month that actually, did you see that? That says, someone wrote in and said, on the top it says, dear friend, how do I, do you remember what it said? I can't remember the wording now. Anyways, at the top it said, dear friend, when I'm angry, how can I express myself, or something like that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what our lesson needs to be on.
There you go. There's a Friend article.
I'm writing it down right
Oh,
now.
I walked in late, I don't know. Anyways, it was completely on the Friend this month, and so it showed step by step when a child is angry, how can they express themselves, and we kind of tied them all together, contention and anger, and anyways, and we were reviewing at the end of our lesson, okay, now what are the steps? How can we do? You know, and I have my one son who's very blue, very giving me direct answers. My younger girls even give me answers. And then there's my one boy who's very yellow. And I was like, oh, and what did you get from this? And, you know, and his answers were not serious. And that's just how he is. He doesn't take it serious. That's how he is with every lesson. And anyways, how can we, when we're angry, and this is like who the lesson was directed to. And his answer was, if I'm angry, I could burp or I could fart. And yes, he's 7, he's a boy. And I looked at my husband and we were like, yes, that's a good, if that takes away your anger, then yes, you can burp. Anyways, I had to twist the table, and then once I felt like I was on his level and he realized I was on his, I think he was taking it more seriously. But when I just laughed it off, and instead of getting mad and saying, oh, that's not the answer I want from you, when I was like, okay, if that takes away your angry feelings, then yes, maybe that's a funny, maybe the laughter can, anyways, does that make sense at all?
Mm-hmm.
I was interested to see, once I actually accepted that answer from him, then he was like, oh, Mom actually didn't get mad at me for saying that. That was an acceptable way to change my anger. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyways, he's very yellow, and I'm still learning. It's a learning curve.
With a yellow, I would, and I haven't read the article in the Friend, but if there's steps, point A, B, C, D, whatever, I would make that list and post it to the fridge.
On his wall in his room too.
Well, where everyone can see it. I wouldn't necessarily, if it's on the wall in his room, it needs to be on the wall in everybody's room.
Well, yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's in everyone's room.
Then and
he
that's
shares with
perfect.
his brother.
That's perfect. And then this week, keep referring to it. Keep referring to it. In my house, I'm not sure I would have accepted those other 2 answers, only because they'll do it.
Well, he already does, it's a problem. And right now, I'm just narrowing it that it doesn't happen at family meeting, it doesn't happen at the table. That's my control right now. I'm like, and if I don't give it attention, he doesn't do it. It's when he's getting the attention that
Sure.
he does it. So,
And that's what a yellow wants, is attention.
right.
Yeah.
So that is my narrow right now. It's not at the table, and it's not when we're having family prayer or meeting or scriptures.
Uh-huh.
Whatever.
Good.
If you're in your room and you're burping, I don't care. If that takes away your anger, awesome. Like, and not that he's like this hateful anger child. He just, when we just had to reiterate that when we have emotions, that's okay.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father gave us emotions. We just have to learn
Figure out what to do
how
with
to
them.
do.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Anyone else have an interesting week in discovering who and what and how? And even in Relief Society, did you look at the teacher and go, did you just, I just want to know if you saw it, if you just saw it, just recognized it, or is it still this misty, dark something out there that you don't get? Yes.
I was like, so my husband and I are similar. Like, I'm like blue-white, or at least according to that. I don't know.
But I took it, because there was another one online that said, you know, to do it like when you were a child or whatever, or how you were as a child or whatever. And so I was like, oh, I wonder what it would do with that. So I like took it in that point of view. And I was a yellow as a kid. And so I was like, apparently I'm all over the place.
Oh, I think we're different colors as youth when we're not responsible as adults.
Yeah, because you're more like
Carefree, and I care about my friends more than anybody else. So everything.
Sure.
That's kind of how it's you are as a teenager or whatever. But it was interesting to see and just have my husband take the test, and then like just throughout the week I was like, oh, you know, like this is like even the kids, this is the red personality, or this is. I thought that I actually had my oldest take one of the tests that I found because there's so many of them on.
Oh, there's dozens.
And hers came out as a red, which I was like, what?
Did you agree with that?
No, because I was like, she doesn't act like that. She's not like, you know, domineering, but it was just interesting to see.
Yeah,
like,
but she is kind of a motherly figure to the little one.
She is. She does try to mother her little brother all the time. I feel like, you're not his mother. Stop it.
Yeah. How old is she?
She's 11.
Okay.
12. So I mean, that was just interesting to see because I thought she was more along, you know, with Y or like along, you know, with us and whatnot. But it's definitely interesting to like to see the different things throughout the week and be like, oh, that's totally like my personality. Or that's totally
Yes,
this, or
yes.
whatever.
And that's what I want you to do, is
Yeah.
just look and not necessarily, just see behaviors
Yeah.
and understand.
But I think seeing her as like her when she took the test as a red, I was like, maybe I need to shift things differently. Maybe she is a little bit more like.
But if she tested red and you see her as this motherly sort, you remember red and blues are both really strong personalities. And as a 11-year-old, the comprehension of the meaning of some of those words is not always exact.
I have some of the definitions on there. So
That was good. That was a good idea. But blues like to be in control too.
Yeah.
So if it's a matter of being in control,
You'd ask my husband, he never gets to drive. I do. I don't want to go on long trips, and I always want. But that's because he got in accidents when we were younger. So I was like, there's reasons. But yeah, I do like to be in control.
yeah, see, both blues and reds like to be in control, but they like to be in control for different reasons.
Yeah.
So they're both powerful, and they both really want to be boss. So that's why I say, if you think she could be a blue, if she's nurturing and then that tends more to blue. Reds don't really care a lot about other people. They just care about control and getting things done. They're very focused on getting things done. But blues care a whole lot about other people and their feelings, and then they feel guilty and they carry. You know, it would be interesting just to keep watching.
Yeah.
As of today, you're no longer allowed to pigeonhole anybody. So you got 1 week to do that, and now you can't. It's now you can be aware of, and if you're aware of, then you seek to address them in their language, whatever it is, and you work with them in their language, and be sure that you're not frustrated because they're not all whatever you are. You know, and allowing them agency to be who they are. But then knowing that you can work with who they are if you understand who they are and who you are. Anyone else have something? Yes?
So I have twin boys, and they're both on missions right now. One is in California, and one is serving a local church mission. And I always assumed that one of them, the one in California, was red, very, very, very red. He acted very red growing up. But as I listened to class last week, I realized that he was not red. He is very blue based on people and how loyal he is to people and how much he needs people. But I always parented him as a red because that's what I believed he was. And that's how he acted a lot of the time in a lot of situations. But he did it for a very different reason. So his reasoning behind it, when I went back and looked at some of those situations, his reasoning behind it was very different. So I wrote him, I emailed him this week, and I said, and I just told him, I said, you know, this is what I learned this week, and I thought it was very interesting, and I explained to him, you know, and he understands the color code because we've talked about it a lot in our family because we have a lot of different colors, and so I explained to him, I said, you know, Christ has all of the positive characteristics of every one of the colors. And so I told him, and so then I listed out what the positive characteristics were from each of those colors and said, I want you to kind of look through that list and see if those are not Christ-like characteristics that he has, and he has all of them. And so I apologized to him for not parenting him as well as I could have, but I also told him that I did the best that I could when in the situations that I was at and with the knowledge that I had. And he wrote back and said, you know, it's not a big deal. He says, you did the best with what you could. He says, I think you were a great parent. And then he said, I want you to send me a copy of the test because I would like to take it and be very, very honest and see actually where I feel like I fit. And I said, absolutely. So I sent it to him and I said, if you'd like to share, I would be happy to see what your answers are just to, you know, kind of see where you are. So it'll be interesting to see what he thinks and where he feels like he falls.
That would be really interesting because he's older. He actually understands the words better now, and now that he's out on his own, and that would be fascinating to see what that's going to come back as. Yes. Have your companion take it too and see. Yeah, I think that's a fun idea that he came up with. I'm excited to see what he says. Anyone else want to share that they have an experience with this? Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say, my husband was here last week, you know, for a chunk of it, but as we were talking about the red, I'm full on red, and I accept it, and my son is 9, and he's got to be full on red, and now I'm kind of like, maybe he's not. He really is, but he doesn't care about it anyway. He only cares about himself. It's just really, so it's an interesting combination to have my personality with his personality, but he is usually the source of contention between my husband and I, who's like, yellow. And he's always people pleasing, my 9-year-old, and it was really good for him to just kind of hear you say it, because I've told him before, but he hasn't been to that specific class. And he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, Jake really does try and control and manipulate the situation so that I'll have his back. And we had a conversation and we're like, we have to have each other's backs before our children. They don't get dibs of having each other's backs. I'm all God, then me, then the kids. In terms of where your loyalties are, it has to be that way because it's been a source of so much contention.
Yeah.
And Jake thrives on it.
Oh,
Yes. He loves it if he sees my husband and I arguing about him. He's like, and so I'm like, so we've stopped like arguing about him, near him, or even discussing situations with him if he's anywhere present because you know, he just thrives on it so much. But it helped my husband to be in class and hearing you talking about it. He kind of thought from a different angle, and he's like, oh my gosh, you're totally right.
Well,
Good.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your son's going to get so frustrated.
I know. He was the one I did nevertheless too, and he's just like,
Oh, yes! I love it when you take one of these little people and help frustrate their control pattern. It's awesome. Anyone else want to, before I make my apologies for today? Yes.
I was going to say baptism on Saturday, and they used the word nevertheless in their talk, and all I could think of was Carly Jenner. It was on a spiritual matter too, and I was like, nevertheless, and I was like, oh.
Oh dear, there may be some hot buttons from this class which will keep you in my mind for a long time.
It's interesting that you say that because I started using that this week. The whose responsibility is it? And nevertheless. And my 5-year-old does not enjoy that. But she will grumpily do whatever she needs to do.
Yeah.
That it takes the power.
It takes the wind out of their sails. Suddenly, there's nobody to fight with. There's nobody you're not contending with them anymore. And that, you cannot fight if the other person won't engage. And when you learn that, really learn that, you'll find out how often you give your children the power to engage because you're engaging. We think that if we yell at them enough or argue with them enough or lecture enough about what's right, that they will disengage because they understand our reasoning. That's what a blue parent will do, is try to help you see how it's morally right, and then you'll stop fighting with me and accept it and be so grateful that I taught it to you. Yeah, no, it doesn't ever happen. They just keep engaging, and it's really frustrating. And until they disengage, you're red. Until they disengage, there's no way for you to teach them anything, because they're not teachable when they're engaged. We think we're teaching them the moral reasoning behind whatever it is we want. But as long as they're engaged in that power struggle, you're not teaching them a thing. They're not learning. They're not into learning. It's not because you're not teaching well. It's because they're not into learning at that moment.
I was going to say that was our family home evening last night to a T.
It was?
I had my red he just kept stirring the pot, and I finally went, you know what, guys, you are not learning, so I'm finished teaching for the night. And my husband looked at me going, what are you doing? They're winning. And I said, no, they're not winning. I was trying to teach them about reverence, because I'm so tired of going to sacrament on Sundays and having my little 7-year-olds just spin because their 15-year-old brother is poking them, or, And so I was trying to teach them why we go to church. I'm like, they're not in the mindset right now to learn. So we'll just keep doing this every night this week until they're ready to learn. And he went, oh guys, I wish you had just learned tonight. And I said, you know what? At some point this week, they're gonna learn, because I am not going to church on Sunday until we have talked about reverence. And my 15-year-old went, I'm out. I said, no, you're the problem right now, sir. So you're going to come here every evening. If it's only for 5 minutes, Mom is going to finish the lesson. And you could just see him go, okay. And I am. I told my husband, I said, we're going to do this every night this week until we have practiced how we're going to be reverent. And he's like, you're seriously punishing yourself. And I said, no, I want to start getting something out of sacrament. So this is what I need to do as a mom. And I said, it'll only take 1 or 2 more times, and Henry will just finally capitulate and listen and not cause a problem, because he knows Mom is serious. And he's like, okay.
You might, another option, if he's, is find a good article, a good talk on the Sabbath day and on reverence. Just on the Sabbath day, there have been so many in the last 2 years. And say, okay, for our reverence meeting tonight, if you would read this talk and then share it with us.
Well, that would be good. He wouldn't do it, though.
But you could try. And then you read it also, so that you would be a good, have him present, but you would have good input for him, so that you're supporting him, you're helping him, you're sustaining him. But if he has to do some of the responsibility of giving, it takes them out of their role of contending.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I just thought it was interesting in the perspective of how the siblings interact because of their colors. Because it would explain a lot, because we've done that lesson on sibling rivalry. And this kind of has explained that even a little bit more to me, because I have a really white child, peaceful, easy, wants to please. And then I have a red child, but he's the one who is always feeling like, Ava, you love her more. You love her more.
Of course they do.
Yeah, but it is interesting, and how they kind of have learned each other's colors, not knowing, because Gavin knows what he can say. He knows what he can do to crush her soul.
Yes.
And I was reading they really want approval or to feel valued, and Gavin just has to say, Ava, just go away. We don't need you here. When we're all saying, and I'm like, and you can just see her face. And I know, and then he gets in trouble, and he's like, I'm just kidding.
Yep.
But that kind of stuff just crushes her. But I'm like, and now in understanding that their colors, it is interesting, because it is so true to their personalities and even their interactions.
Next week, we are going to talk about one of the best tools I have ever learned in Discipline, which is learning how to say I'm sorry. It's a 4-step process. It's not just I'm sorry. So when they say something that's hurtful and then they follow it up with just kidding, because that is the humor of the day. the humor of the day is put downs and it's harsh, and so they're learning the humor of the day, and you have to teach them that that's not allowed at home. If it is hurtful at home, it's not. We can only allow those things that build. So then he would have to say sorry with these 4 steps, and that becomes the teaching tool. Because when they say, "Oh, I'm sorry," there's no teaching in that. There is nothing. So next week we'll go over the 4 steps of saying I'm sorry, and they are magnificent. They are, boy, if that's the only thing you get out of the class this semester, they are powerful. They're powerful. But that's next week. So, if there's nothing else, that I have to share with you what I read on a reader board. When I drive in from Boise, I have to drive through downtown Boise. And in the middle of downtown Boise, there's I think it's an American cleaning company. And they have the best reader boards that I love driving through and I have to go and come through downtown Boise anytime. I mean, that's my way to the connector. So I pass there, and they change these often. And the last one they had was something about time is precious, waste it wisely. I thought, how cool, that's good. I sent that out, texted that to all my kids. But the one that's up right now is, and listen to this, because I want you to apply this to your parenting. I just read it this morning, and I thought, if that is not the best thing I ever heard for parenting, the best thing I ever heard for parenting. So I want you to apply this to parenting. And I'll tell you why, is because most of you feel pretty inadequate from time to time in your parenting. You feel like, oh boy, I just bombed that. I did, that was terrible. Or your kids are really acting up, and you think, I'm clueless. I'm a failure. I don't know what to do. And we all have had those feelings in parenting. So when you have that moment, I want you to remember this little saying that they had up on the reader board. It says, I never lose. So as a parent, I want you to know you never lose. Even if you lose, you don't lose. I either win or I learn.
My little boy's bedroom.
I love that. It's so good. I think that's a good one to teach your children about failure. But, we need to remember that too. You may have a drag out with one of the kids and just, a big argument. But bottom line is, if you've learned how not to react to them, how you can handle it, that didn't work, so you can try something different. You are a winner, and so is the child. So I really, really like that. They don't change it quite often enough for me because I drive past it so often. They could do it a little bit more often. I just am so like the things they put up. Well, I've noticed that some of you have opened your syllabus to self-esteem, and I'm just going to tell you that's not what we're doing today. That I told you at the beginning, it's my opportunity as a teacher to decide what I'm going to do. And that's not what I'm going to do. And the reason is because I'm a little bit, it's just not attached quite as permanently as it used to be upstairs. And, I told Andrea, she said, ask me. She's helping me write a new syllabus. And so she's sending me quotes and things from each week so that I can get going on writing a new syllabus. So next year we'll have a new syllabus for this semester. And so I told her, she said, okay, now which one do you want me to work on this week so I can have that information to you for class for next week? And the next one's self-esteem. And I said, I'm just going to go straight down the index. I'm just going to go straight down. So whatever's next is it. That's what I'm going to do. And then I got online and I went to our Facebook. And there were 12 people that had posted about going to bed, getting their kids to go to bed. I was so excited. To see other people posting great ideas, super ideas. And I got so thrilled about it in the moment that I posted to the Facebook. I said, Well, the next week we'll start discipline and maybe some of your questions will be answered. Wasn't next, that's jumping ahead a week. So because I will be honest with what I posted on Facebook, we'll start discipline today. Discipline is a 2-week class. It's the only one that we actually on purpose spend 2 weeks. Some of the other ones we do, but it's not a purpose. We just do because I don't get finished. But so we are actually going to start discipline today, and then we'll finish it next week. With that being said, I think that today will be the most discouraging lesson you'll hear in this class. And I apologize, but oh well. Nevertheless, it's the way it is. It's what I'm going to do. And I'll tell you why. The reason being is today we're going to talk about why children misbehave. What causes them? What's going on? What's happening when they misbehave? And I'm not going to give you any answers of how to deal with it, basically. We're going to talk about what discipline is. And your homework assignment, one of your homework assignments is, I want you to look at your own personal style of disciplining. What do you do when a child misbehaves? Do you yell? Do you capitulate? Just to buy peace, do you give in if they argue with you long enough? Are you just frustrated and contend with them? Have little power struggles? What do you do when they are not doing what you want them to do? How do you get them to change their behavior? And so I'm not going to give you a lot of tools this week, because if I did, you would change your behavior. Now, what will happen too, I think, during the week, that's why this week's so hard, is you'll go home and you'll start looking at what you do and realize it's not working, and yet not wanting to give in because you really feel like you need to teach them what to do that's right. You're just going to be frustrated. And that's just the way it's going to be. So anticipate that. If you're going to do the homework, I think that's what's going to happen. Now, if you don't do the homework, it won't happen, because you'll just go about doing what you're doing anyway. Oh, but I think you'll hear me in the back of your head. I think I'm probably going to go home with you. So if that makes me happy and excited, I really want to cause you some frustration this week. And the reason is...
So are you going to help us next week?
Yes.
Okay.
See, next week I'm going to give you 14 tools.
Okay.
So next
Just so
week...
I know there's a
Next week, I really want to help you with the answers. But it's sort of like, if you're on a diet, you really want to lose diet, so you decide that you'll just write down everything you eat. And then after the first day, you realize that all you've been eating is carbs. You didn't have any vegetables, you didn't have any fruit, but those carbs just tasted so good. I'm a breadaholic. Give me bread, give me cinnamon rolls, give me cookies, give me, and I can just graze through the day. And I'm just happy. But if I'm really thinking, but then I can look at it and say, ooh. Now, my education says there should be a few leafy greens in here. I think that's what you're supposed to be eating, and a few raw vegetables like carrots, and there's none. There's none in none on my schedule. But then I'm thinking, okay, so could somebody give me a menu plan? Could somebody give me a menu of something that tastes good, looks good but tastes good? Some of that stuff just doesn't sound appealing to me. But somebody else cooks it and it's yummy. It's really yummy. So, and that's kind of what I'm going to do today. Is I really am challenging you to look at all the carbs in your parenting and just see where you are. I just want you to see what you're doing, because I can't help you to change unless you're really honest about where you are. And so those who will benefit most by next week are those who are most miserable this week. Does that make sense? You know, I'd like to say I really don't want to make you uncomfortable, but that would be a lie. I really do want to make you uncomfortable. Simply because until you look at where you are, you can't make good changes. You can't, because you don't know what needs to be different. So that's my goal. That is my goal. So let's start out with, what's discipline? What is discipline? When we talk about discipline, what is discipline? What's your goal with discipline? When somebody says, how do you why are you disciplined? What's the purpose of discipline? What do you want? You know, change behavior. Change behavior. Absolutely. The goal of discipline is to change behavior. Now, what is your what's your workbook for what you do? How do you decide how to change behavior? Where have you gotten whatever you use to change behavior? Where have you learned what you learned?
Your mom and dad.
Your parents, what happened to you?
Your mom and dad. Most of us are going to discipline the way we were disciplined. And it's not necessarily because we loved it or we thought it was right. Some of us hated it. And our feeling was, when I grow up, I will never, never, never do that to my kids. But in the moment when you have kids and they're misbehaving in ways that are just driving you crazy, you revert to doing that because you don't know anything else. And even in the moment as you do it, you can hear your parents doing it to you. It's like, you know, deja vu, but you don't know what else to do. That's all you know. And so you do it. And what happens is, because we have a little bit stronger will generation, they're a little bit more entitled, they're a little bit more, they're less respectful of adults. They don't necessarily tolerate what we have done, what happened to us very well. And so you get a lot more reaction than you ever did. And so you think, I never acted that way. I never did that to my parents. But your kids are doing it to you. And it's not because they're bad kids. They are fabulous. They're choice spirits. But they're being raised in a different environment. And what they learn in their social settings at school and at church and in primary and, you know, whenever they go out into a social setting, they're learning behavior that isn't necessarily being taught in your home, but because it's learned, they're bringing it back to your home. Does that make sense? And so you have to, number one, learn how to discipline in an appropriate way. And number two, let them know that that behavior is not acceptable in your home. And so it becomes, you become a bad guy sometimes because everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is, you know, everybody else is. And that's not acceptable in your home. Now, I think the first week, we talked about one of the critical parts of parenting, and we talked about forming attachments, having your children attached to you, that from a very young age, don't be shipping them off to 3-year-old gymnastic classes and dance classes and soccer class. Keep them home, keep them with you, keep them by you. And in doing that, help them form this bonding to you. You have got, it's not just a matter of keeping them in your house. It's not that you create a prison, but you're creating relationships with them. You're doing things with them. You're teaching them. You're singing with them. You're reading stories with them. You're going on walks with them. You're talking with them. You're doing those things in the early years to help them bond to you. Did you remember from that class that we had a couple weeks ago how young they are before they start forming pure attachments?
Like second grade.
Second grade. It was about second grade. You are on it. You are on it. A+. So it's about second grade where if you have not formed the bonding, now this is if you have not formed this attachment at home, that they will seek attachment and they will start seeking it outside the home in peers. And the problem of our society is who you're attached to is who will influence you in parenting. So if they are attached to you, then you have the power to influence them in teaching and training and helping them to grow. If they attach to peers, then what happens is they allow the peer group to teach them. Now, they have peers training peers, and that's why we have a society that's very immature and irresponsible and don't get things done, because you have peers trying to set standards and morals, and obviously they don't have any. And if this attachment is in place, hang on just a minute, if this is the primary attachment, and then you bring the child home into the home setting again, they become very sassy, they become very defiant, they become very disrespectful, and you can see that in them. When you see that, that should be a warning flag to you that this attachment needs to be coming stronger. And does that mean you cut this one off? You bet, if you can. You know, if you could, they start spending less times with that person or wherever, so that you can rebond. And you won't rebond as long as you keep this one really strong. You have to almost work to lessen that one and cut it off if you can, so that you can rebuild this attachment. This one needs to be strong. So discipline starts when they're very, 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 very young in forming these attachments. Because you can't train them or teach them well. You can bully them and threatening them, but you can't teach them and train them well in love unless that attachment is there. Yes?
No, I was just gonna say, don't they normally, I don't know, or this is what I've seen, like teenagers normally like move away and like attach onto their peers just as they become, you know, older teenagers. Is that not necessarily what you want, or isn't that like a normal thing of teenagers to like?
Socializing is normal for teenagers. Their need to socialize is important because they need to learn social skills. But their primary attachment can still be at home. They can still very much want to please mom and dad. They can still very much enjoy the associations that they have at home, and should. And if you're parenting right and building that structure here at home, where needs are being met, then it will happen. But does that mean they should never go out here? No, they should have social experiences. But if this one remains strong, then this one will just be something that will build them and help them to grow, and they will learn to social interaction and social etiquette. But their appreciation for home and their respect for home and their desire for eternal families and the desire to build a family of their own, care for siblings, will be intact. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Isn't it our goal too that we want, like, if that attachment is in place like it should be, ultimately they want their socializing brought home, right? At least that's what I want. I want my teen, like, that's my goal, is to, if I have my attachment correctly with my children and also their peers, they're going to want to be bringing their peers to that attachment, right?
Yes, and that's very good. But in that, you have to provide something for them to want to bring them to.
That's what I'm saying.
So, yep,
So
you know, you do. Yes.
So, question, how do you know if the attachment is there or if it's just the teenage attitude? Just the standard, I mean, is that when they have the teenage attitude, does that mean their attachment is not there, or?
No, I don't think so. I think that there is a normal pulling away, particularly junior, senior years, that is a healthy, good, strong, wonderful thing because you want them to be independent. You don't want them to want to hover under your wing forever with you taking care of them, and they never want to go outside and they never want to do anything and they never want to be out there and it's too scary and I just want to be home. That's not what you want. You missed the boat if that's where they are. So you want them to, you're going to encourage them to break some of these ties as they get to be juniors and seniors. That's good. But you can tell your kids still like to be at home. And they still like to do family things. And they're still willing to be there. And they still get involved in positive ways, in family home evenings and in family scriptures. Does that mean every minute of every day it's, oh, yay, can we have family home evening? They won't do that anymore. That's just kind of a thing of the past. But you can tell if you have been watching them and been in tune with them and know of your bonding, you can tell when there is no more attachment. They'll still talk to you in moments. You'll still be able to have moments where you're very close. You can still have one-on-one time that is meaningful.
So does it come and go then?
Oh,
Like,
yes.
Right. Okay. Because right now, I can basically tell when the attachment is leaving, because when they come back from their friends, it's negative, negative, negative. This is my 13-year-old, negative, negative, negative. My 16-year-old is pulling out of that now. He's starting to I want to be with dad. I want to go with dad somewhere, or more back. He's coming back around more, and it's not such a fight. But my 13-year-old's just now starting.
Yes.
And so I
and
can always
this
tell.
middle school to age is horrible. I would love to put him in hibernation for about 3 years and then pull him back out, because that is hard parenting, and it's where you have to be very firm and very kind, and you have to monitor electronics, and you have to, you just have to, and I'm telling you, we'll do morality a lesson later on, but you better have set the rules for your electronics long before they're 13, because if you start trying to do it at 13, you may have a war on your hands. So we work to build the foundation of that attachment. That attachment will be tried during middle school, but you are still not allowing them to determine the relationship. Does that make sense? You're still, in middle school, their social, now 10 or 1 and 1. I think their socializing still should be pretty much at a minimum. They're going to scouts, they're doing church activities, they're doing scouts activities. They occasionally, they may be on a team somewhere, but to just then go and spend a lot of time at a lot of friends' house and be able to be gone a lot of the time, I would be wary, because that's where that's where their attachments will be made. So because the very nature of their lives is getting more busy, I think you have to be more aware of creating bonding moments and time so that you can keep that attachment to you secure and good. It's only, now, and I hate to say this, you're going to have some negative moments, and that's okay. But if the bonding, if the attachment is good, then in peaceful moments, you're going to be able to train them in doctrine, in correct principles, in testimony of Jesus Christ. But if your attachment is not good, you can preach all those things to them, and it won't go in. So that's why the relationship has to be good. How can the Savior tell us what he wants us to know? Because we know he loves us. We know that. We feel it. And that's the bonding, that's the attachment we want to create with our children so that we can have the foundation to teach them on.
Is the attachment still as powerful and effective if it's just towards one parent? There's a blatant attachment with one parent. Can it still be?
Yes.
It can still be just as powerful.
Yes.
The combination.
Yes.
They're one parent, but they're just.
And I might just throw out that it may not be with either parent. It might be with a scout leader. It might be with a young women's leader. It might, I mean, that might be the primary strong attachment. And it needs to be an adult. It needs to be so that they are being taught and directed and guided by an
It's just
adult.
having the attachment with someone that loves them, that gets it, that
Yes.
thoughtful probably.
Yes.
And then I
However, I always like to throw up the red flags. However, let's say your child is not attached to you, or you're to the parents, but is attached to a young woman or a scout leader that's a good man, that's a good person. Be thankful. Be grateful for that. That's good. But it doesn't take you off the hook. Don't just say, okay, well then they will teach him. You have not been released from parenting. So your responsibility is to continue to seek to form that attachment. It's not to lessen their relationship with that adult, but it is to, in your time with them, to work to create that attachment. Does that make sense? Okay, and all of this had very little to do with what we're talking about today. So, but anyway.
You stressed us out about the attachment.
Well, the reason why is if you don't have it, you can't discipline. What's discipline? Discipline is to teach. Discipline is to teach correct behavior. To teach correct behavior. So when we talk about discipline, well, let me focus on a few other things first. We have to learn how this teaching needs to happen. And understand that discipline, the best discipline, does not happen in a moment of misbehavior. The best discipline happens all the time. That you're all the time teaching correct behavior. Then in the moment of misbehavior, when you have to teach correct behavior, you have a foundation upon which to correct that behavior. Does that make sense? If you only react to teaching them what they should do when they do something wrong, they'll never learn how to control themselves. Most discipline comes in validating, in giving them responsibility, in teaching them how to be responsible, in teaching them to be 100% responsible for their behavior, in setting groundworks of maturity and responsibility. Most discipline you want to happen when they're not misbehaving, when you're teaching them correct principles. Now, if you're teaching them correct principles and your attachment is strong, their desire to please you increases, and their desire to please Heavenly Father increases, so it already limits how much misbehavior they have. Does it mean they won't have any? No, they will. They will. But it lessens the amount of misbehavior. So part of discipline is in teaching them how to be responsible, which happens before they make mistakes. So when we go back to learning it the Lord's way, go back to the Garden of Eden. Now, I would say the Garden of Eden is comparable to the first 8 years of your children's lives, where they can't sin, but they're taught correct principles. Can they make mistakes? Yes, they can. That doesn't mean they're going to do everything right. It means that what they do wrong is not a sin. So that those first 8 years are your time to teach them with real intent, intentional righteous parenting, correct principles. So Heavenly Father, in the Garden of Eden, He walked and talked with Adam and Eve. Now, what do you think He was talking about? them about the plan of salvation. He was teaching them correct principles. He was teaching them the gospel of Jesus Christ. He was teaching them truth. That's what he does whenever he talks to them. He was teaching them how much he loved them. He was, he was reinforcing who they are. Now, we don't know how long they were in the Garden of Eden. We know it was for a period of time. And in the Garden of Eden, what were they told to do? Okay, yes. Actually, yes. They were told to tend the garden, which, even though in a semi-paradise, there's stuff to do. There's not weeds to pull, but I'm sure there's stuff to do. It's a different job list than we have in our gardens in the summer, because we have those noxious weeds. But they had to take care of the animals, which may mean just loving them and, nurturing them. We don't know what their job list was, but we know that Heavenly Father didn't say, hey, just kick back and don't do anything. He gave them responsibilities. Now, what's interesting is he also gave them commandments. He said, do not partake of this fruit. So as we are teaching our little people in our home, we should be teaching them right and wrong. There's things that we should teach them that they shouldn't do. We should be in love. Then Heavenly Father left them. And we need to teach our children some responsibility and then give them the opportunity to do it without us being there. For example, when your child's a baby, you go in every day and dress them. Do they have the opportunity to dress themselves then? No, because you're doing it and they're not capable. And so then if you teach them how to be capable and you've taught them correctly and they've learned and you've watched them and you've helped them and you've done it all appropriately, then what do? You leave and you ask them, tell them it's their responsibility to dress themselves. They may or may not do it right. And if they don't do it right, what do? More training. But then you leave them and let them try to do it. You see what I'm saying? Is we teach them, we leave them, we let them try to do it themselves. If they succeed, great. That's super. They're accountable. If they don't, then we teach them more, and then we leave them again, and we work on teaching and training. Now, what was very interesting is in the Garden of Eden, then Satan comes and tempts them. Are our children tempted? Absolutely. Are they tempted to be distracted and go read a book instead of get dressed? Of course they are. Are they tempted to want to go watch TV or play electronics before their work is done? Of course it is. That's part of the noxious weeds of this life. But they will be. But what's interesting is to watch how Heavenly Father handled it. When he came back, there was some accountability. He said, is it done? Did you partake of the fruit? And they admitted that they had. Now, what if your kids say, no? Yes, my room's clean. Yep, it's clean. Yeah, it's clean. What do? What did the Lord do then? Did he scold him? Did he jump all over him? Did he start the lecture series? How many times did I tell you not to take that fruit? How many times do I have to tell you not to take that fruit? I told you not to take that fruit. Okay, I'll give you one more chance. He didn't do that. In love, in kindness, and keeping his word, he just kindly administered the consequence that was already in place. And he invited them out of the garden. But he prepared them as he invited them out of the garden. He made coats of skin for them. He helped to protect them so that they could succeed out of the garden. He sent angels to teach them when they were out of the garden. So he didn't just say, tough beans, you're out. He created an environment where in spite of the consequence, they could still succeed. And so in our parenting, this is kind of a prototype, if you will. We need to apply the consequence in love and straight way. Immediately. He did it right away. We don't know how much right away is because we don't know their timetable, but we know that it happened soon, that they were cast out. And then he made it possible for them to succeed in the consequence.
So we've been having struggles in our family lately, and my kids have been having a little bit of a hard time. So my 8-year-old before has had a really hard time with being honest and with school work and getting it done. And yesterday, after we got home, his teacher sent home a paper that they have to mark how they did during the day 1 to 4. And he wrote on there that he had some homework that he needed to finish. And he brought me the folder, and then I asked him, now is the time to be honest with me. The teacher wrote here that you have homework that, Nope, I don't. Gave him a couple opportunities, and then I have her phone number, and so I texted her and said, hey, he says that he doesn't have it, and she texted back, I put it in his folder as he was walking out the door, so he does have it. And a few more times I asked him, and he continued to lie, and probably about 7 or 8 times. And I didn't. I'm like, well, we're gonna deal with this, but not right now. And then later on, when he was supposed to go down and take a shower, he went down and was reading, and he came back upstairs, and I gave him a hug before bed, and I'm like, oh, your hair is all dry, and it's not smelling so good. Oh yeah, I took a shower, Mom. Well, no. And I said, okay, after this, and after he took a shower, I'm like, okay, now we need to talk. We need a consequence, but I want you to think of a consequence, and I'm going to think of a consequence, and we're going to work on this, because we can't do this. We have to have trust in our family right now. Is that, because you're saying do it right now.
Okay, we're actually going to talk about this next week in the tools. Okay. That's why I told you I'll make you frustrated this week. But let me just really quick give you a cliff notes, because I know of the struggle that's going on in your home, and I don't want you to totally have to be hanging by a thread. Let's go back to the beginning of this. So when I say quick, who knows the scripture about, it's in your thing, about, what is it?
Even patience is balanced by reproving these times.
Yes. What is that one? Okay, reproving betimes with sharpness when moved upon by the Holy Ghost, and then showing afterwards an increase of love towards him whom thou hast reproved, lest he see me to be his enemy. Okay, what's betimes? Elder Bednar. Early on. So it's early on in this situation. It's early on in their life. It's early on in any given situation. It's early on. So from the time that he went to school until the time he went to bed, that's not early on. So early on would be immediately. Here, we'll go through. What's sharpness? With exactness. It isn't being mean. It isn't being loud. It isn't being critical. It means with exactness. With exactness. So we're going to do it early on with exactness. So let's just take this experience. Number 1, there's very challenging things going on in the home. So the child is not, he's functioning in grief, if you will. So he's not functioning, and you have to understand that as, well, so are you, but you have to understand that that's what and grief kind of has a twin of discouragement. When your life isn't what you want it to be, what you thought it would be, where you wanted it to be, then there's a helplessness and a discouragement that goes hand in hand with this grief process. So whether because he's young, he can't articulate, hey, this is how I'm feeling, but you can know that that's part of the emotional battle that he's seeking. So that's when you cut him some slack. Meaning, so he came home and you see the note of the teacher and you say, do you know what your homework is? You don't ask them if they have homework because they already know they have homework. It's written. It's written by the teacher. So I wouldn't say, even though in the Garden of Eden, Heavenly Father said, did you partake of the fruit? Because his emotional level is also down and is limited, I would simply say, you do have homework. And he'd say, no, I don't. And then I'd say, come here, sit by me right here. Let's just go through this notebook. I mean, let's go through the folder and see what's here. And you would have found it. Well, then I would say, okay, I'll call the teacher. Then you must know where it is. So let's go find it. They need support. Walk with them, walk with them, walk with them. Put your arm around them, love them, love them, love them. Because their situation, but hold them accountable. And so, is the teacher lying to me? It needs to be here. The shower, we need to say, go down and then come back. Their ability to perform, though it has been good, now the situation in the home puts them back on a 3-year-old level. They need to have somebody hold them accountable in little things often because of the time. But that was a good thing because I wanted to talk about early on and sharpness. You see in your syllabus 2 triangles, I think. And they're facing each other. And it's very interesting, the concept that I believe in these 2 triangles. Boyd K. Packer said, and I love this, leave off trying to alter your child just for a little while and concentrate on yourself. That's what I want you to do this week for your homework. Stop trying to alter the child and concentrate on finding out where you are and what you do. Then he said, the changes must begin with you, not with your children. You can't continue to do what you've been doing, even though you thought it was right, and expect to unproduce some behavior in your child when your conduct was one of the things that produced it. Teaching discipline to children, then, requires that parents discipline themselves. This means becoming Christ-like. That last part sometimes may feel overwhelming, but it does mean that we have to have understanding and patience and not parent out of anger, not discipline out of anger. So these 2 triangles that you see are 2 styles of parenting, if you will. The first triangle, which on my paper is on the left-hand side, so you're looking at the broad base and then it goes down, is typical of how most of us parent. And we do it unconsciously. And what it signifies is that in the early stages of a child's life, and part of it's because they're not capable, but a lot of it is, and I'm talking when they're getting up to 2 and 3, I'm not talking about newborn babies or the first year of their life. I'm talking about when they can walk and they're starting to be a little bit independent. What we do is give them all the freedom. They're so cute. They are so darling. They're just so wonderful that we give them all of this freedom. And then as they get older, a little 2-year-old running around after a bath naked in the living room, I don't care what you say, it's cute. They have the cutest little buns, and they are darling. They're just cute. But is it appropriate? And the answer is no. We need to start teaching them modesty and self-respect. But if we don't, if we just simply enjoy that part of their personalities, and we leave this really broad, that they have all of this freedom, then when they're 4 and they're doing that, it's not cute and it's not funny. And we try to pull back then the reins, and we're going to get some flack. They don't want to have their freedom curtailed. And so as they even get older, we find it more and more difficult as then we try to pull back the control. You know, how many of you, no raise of hands, have 2-year-olds that are just so cute, and they're just so fun, and they stayed up, they took a late nap, and they're not tired at night, and so bedtime comes, and well, they could just stay up because they're just so much fun to watch, and they're just so cute, and they come crawl in bed with you, and they're just so fun to play with and to tickle, and they laugh, and they're so fun, and all of a sudden you want them to have a bedtime, and you want some time with your spouse. And they're not as cute at 4 as they were at 2. And so you really don't want them in your bed with you anymore. And they won't go to bed. So this is what Boyd K. Packer was saying, is sometimes we've taught them by default behavior we don't like. So if you look at the other one that starts really narrow and then it goes wide, that kind of is an indication of the way the Lord parents. You know, when children turn 8, he doesn't give them the Melchizedek priesthood. He lets them be baptized. And then when they've proven themselves, then they get some more responsibility. They get the Aaronic priesthood. And then when they've proven themselves, they get the Melchizedek priesthood. And then when we've proven ourselves, we're allowed the privilege of going into the temple and making covenants and partaking of the ordinances there. He doesn't start there. You prove yourself and grow into that. So in parenting, that's what needs to happen. In cell phone use, in dating, in social experiences, they need to start narrow and grow in, proving responsibility before that they're getting privileges. They earn privileges. So that's the way the Lord parents, and I think that that's the way that we need to look at our own parenting. Now, we've talked about, when I talk about attachments, I'm talking about a principle that's called emotional bank accounts. When a child's emotional bank account is full, they are attached to you. They feel close to you, they feel attached to you. An emotional bank account is something that's really very interesting, and it will follow you all your life long. It never goes away. And emotional bank accounts are just the emotional level that we feel that we're full so we can give to the world. Does that make sense? And so with a child, with anyone, the interesting thing about a bank account is that it's not fair. Your kids ever say that to you? It's not fair. And a bank account is not fair. And I'm just telling you that up front. Because it takes 10 positives to balance out one negative. If it was a bank account, like at a money bank account, it's like putting in 10 dimes to equal $1. So if you do one negative, you have one crisis with your child, you have to discipline them for something, and it's a negative experience. It's like taking $1 out of the bank account, but you have to have already put in 10 deposits to keep the bank account even. So what seems like it's not fair is that it seems like we're always correcting them. And, getting them to do their homework, getting them to go to bed, getting them to clean their bedroom, getting them to, it seems like this is an ongoing thing. So what does that say about this? In order to balance, you need to be more focused on this all the time. Now, when we talk about self-esteem, I'll teach you how to do that. But just know that focus needs to be a lot more conscientious than it is in most families. And it goes with every relationship. Husband, wives, you and siblings, you and children. That positive input needs to increase in every relationship to keep those relationships balanced. So when I talk about keeping that attachment, the attachment is strong if the bank account is full. So work hard to keep those bank accounts full. I'm going to teach you a really good principle here in just a minute, but first of all, what's the difference between we want to discipline our children, and my feeling is that a lot of times we simply punish our children. So punishment and discipline are very interesting concepts because I can't tell you, like, for example, timeout can be either a punishment or a discipline. So it's not always what you do, it's how you do it that makes it a punishment or a discipline. So punishment is what most of us use. And it is, the consequence is you will pay for doing a wrong behavior. And by paying for the wrong behavior, you'll learn to do what's right. And we have this misguided feeling, I don't know where it came from, but somehow we as parents feel like if I can have a consequence that makes you feel so bad, so rotten, so terrible, you'll never do it again because you don't want to have that rotten consequence again. So my goal as a parent is to make you feel so rotten that you wouldn't dare do it again. Now, you'll look at me and go, oh, no, I don't. But the truth is, occasionally that feels good. Just because, let you know that you have the power. But it never teaches or trains a child. Doesn't motivate them to good behavior. So let me show you how it looks. A child will be fighting. So you'll say, okay, I have told you guys 900 times not to fight. So you go down to your room until you can stop fighting. Go. So the child leaves, hits the door, and comes zipping right back out. And what do you say? I told you to go to your room. Get back in your room. You get in there and stay. They go down and stay 30 seconds. Come back out, smiling, happy. Ooh, he just fried you. So you say, you go down there and stay until I tell you you can come out. So they go back. Now, do you really think they're going in there and thinking about how rotten they've been? Do you think they're going to go sit on their bed and say, oh, I shouldn't tease, and I have to be kind, and I need to share? They're going to go down there, and they are livid with you, Mom. You set them in their room. They're not repenting at all. They're down there fuming and feeling rotten. And the thing that they feel most rotten about is that they got caught. And they think the other one should be in the room too. And so finally, because they're so angry and they're so mad, they come out crying. And now you say, okay, now you've learned. Now you'll be better. Now don't do that again. And think that they're going to be good. That's punishment. Punishment, I think you have do you have it in your syllabus? Discipline versus punishment. It's really interesting because punishment is always an exercise of power on the part of the adult. You will too do this because I told you to. You will too go to your room. You will too do, dishes all week this week because you will too. It's a power-oriented thing, and it is a little bit based on revenge, on parental revenge. I'm going to get even with you, especially if they're arguing with you and you're in a power struggle, then very often that's what it is. Discipline forms natural or logical consequences. It's simply the reality of a social order. So your child hit someone at school, you're suspended for 2 weeks and you're going to be here. That's punishment. But to teach them the proper social behavior becomes discipline. That's a natural consequence. For her to have to apologize and to decide what she will do instead, that's the natural consequence of that kind of behavior. That's what happens. And so it's something that just kind of flows. In punishment, parents assume the responsibility for the learning. They assume that if you, and I can't tell you how many times I've had a parent say, okay, this is happening now, what do I do to my kid to make him behave? What's the punishment? What should I do? And so you're assuming the responsibility for their changed behavior. If I punish them the right way, the behavior will change. When in truth, in discipline, changing behavior is the responsibility of each individual. We have agency. So what we have to do as parents is create a situation that motivates them to want to change to correct behavior. And that's never done when you're angry. Punishment is closed options. They don't have a choice. They will do what you say because that's the punishment. Where in discipline, options can be open, where they can, it doesn't always matter what they do. They can, as long as they're going to learn correct behavior. In punishment, it teaches that feelings and them for having those feelings, that they, because they behaved wrong, because they had wrong feelings, anger or fear or whatever, that's wrong, so they are wrong. Punishment makes a child feel innately bad, that they're a bad person. And discipline, on the other hand, separates the two and says, you as a child are good and you made a bad choice and we need to work on the choice. And you have power over your choices. You also have consequences with choices. But you, as a person, are good, and I believe in you that you can make good choices. Punishment is almost always done in anger. Meaning, you escalate, and I'll tell you, and I'll show you this in just a minute, but you escalate to the point that you're angry before you do something. So your action is always done in anger. Does that make sense? Whereas in discipline, your action, your teaching, is always done at level 0. You're never angry. You're in control. If you're not in control, I don't care what you do. If you're angry, it's punishment. But if you're in control, if you're at level 0, it can be discipline. The reason that we like punishment is because it's quick and easy. We do it right now and it's done. But it doesn't have long-lasting teaching results. On the other hand, discipline, which is teaching, can be time-consuming, it can be difficult, it can be laborious, it can be repetitive, but it helps the children learn to control themselves long-term. And that's what we want. That's what we want. Now, the word discipline, the root word that it comes from is disciple in Greek. And the disciple is a follower of Christ. So as we correct behavior, the vision that we should see is that we are teaching them how to become a follower of Christ. We want them to develop the attributes that the Savior has, that they become followers of Christ. Okay, the next thing that I want to show you is in your syllabus is the action line. And it's a right angle. Oh, I know somebody's going to say it's not there. It's not a triangle, it's a right angle. Okay, this is what the action line is. This is really important. It goes like this. And there's a right angle. Okay? It's probably just as well we're putting it on the board if you're live streaming it. So this is what you're going to look at yourself for this week. I'm not going to tell you how to get out of it, but I want you to just look at yourself and see where you are on it, okay? This point right here is what we call level 0. That is when you are in absolutely perfect control of yourself. You're having a great day, you feel good, and it's wonderful. This is time, and this is emotion. This is a lousy pen. And this is the action line. Now, what this shows is most of us, typically, when we want something done, we will say, we will tell our children what we want done. For example, it's almost dinner time. And we'll say, okay, kids, it's almost dinner time. You need to put away the electronics and let's get ready for dinner. Now, do you really expect them to drop everything and come immediately? And I see all of you going, no. Now, you would like them to, but we've trained them. I want you to watch yourselves. You'll throw out this first directive before you really want them to come. If they came at that moment, you'd go, oh, I'm not quite ready for dinner yet. We're not quite ready. So you kind of throw out this as a just beware kind of a directive. Okay? And so we don't necessarily really expect him to come. Now, I want you to understand that once you say that, you've started a training process. You are teaching your children what it means to obey. And you're teaching it. So if you're throwing that out as a directive, but you don't really mean for them to come, what you're teaching is, I'm going to tell you to do things, but I don't really mean you to obey right now. So if I tell you to get your shoes on and get in the car, well, I've already taught you that the first time I say it, I don't really mean it. Do you see what I'm saying? They're learning principles in what you're doing. So you're not angry, they're not angry, and they don't move. And they don't move. So 15 minutes later, now you really do mean it, because you really are ready for them to come and help get dinner ready. You say, hey kids, I told you to turn off the electronics, and I need you to come now and help me with dinner. Are you angry yet? No, I don't think you really expected it in the first place. And so you're not really angry. So you've moved down time, and you've moved down space, but you're not angry yet. But they still don't come. So the third time you say, come on guys, I am dead serious. It's time for dinner and I need you to help. And would you get those things turned off and get in here? Now are you angry? Well, let's just say high frustration.
I'm not angry, I'm highly frustrated.
So we've moved down here and we've moved up here. From the time we first said come at level 0, we've let time elapse, maybe 15, 20, I don't know, half hour. It's all different in every home. But now we're emotional. Now we are really getting frustrated. Do they come yet? No, but they heard you that time. Now, what are they listening for? Are they listening for what you want them to do?
No, for you to listen for voicing it angry.
They're waiting for the mom voice. And in 10 minutes it comes. And now you are raging in on their space. And you're saying, I told you to put that down. And you take it right out of their hands and say, I told you to come and help me with dinner. Now, when I tell you to do something, I expect you to do it. Now, you get in here and help me. And now they stand up and they come. Okay, now you're here. Time's here. Oh, that's straight. So this here is what we call the action line. That's when you acted. It's when you did something besides yelled. It's when your body moved. Now, that's what teaches them. They are not in tune. Well, they are in tune with your voice level because they know until it reaches a certain point, you're not going to move. But you've taught them that when my voice reaches this pitch, I am coming and you better beware. So that is where they have learned that they need to move. Now what happens is even funnier, I get a kick out of, is that later on the evening, you call your mother. And you say, Mother, I don't know what to do with these kids. They just won't obey unless I'm yelling at them, and I don't want to yell at them, and I don't know what to do. And these rotten kids. I'm not a rotten mother. It's these rotten kids. They won't do anything I ask her to do. You know, so what I'm telling you is you've trained them that they don't have to do anything till your voice reaches a certain level. And then we're unhappy when it happens. So we need to, as Koike Packer said, look to ourselves first, and we're going to retrain. Yes?
Well, I was just going to say that's interesting you pointed that out, because, and I always find that this happens on the weekend. I do this all the time, and when you point it out, it's sad that I do, because I just did it last night when it came to dinner. But on the weekends, when my husband's home, the kids get in trouble for this exact same thing. So I'll say, kids, can you come help me? Hey, kids. And then by the third time, Eric's like, okay, you're in trouble. All of your mom has asked 3 times. And then they're all like, they don't know what to do. I've trained them in that way. But when Eric comes in that, then the rest of the weekend, they jump when mom says, because dad's there.
And dad is acting.
Yes.
So I just want you to know it's action. It's your action that teaches. So what do? What we're going to do is move the action line back here. So we're going to move this way to right here. And so now I'm going to say, okay, kids, in 15 minutes, I need you to shut down electronics, turn off the TV, whatever they're doing, and I need your help in 15 minutes. Okay, I'm at 0. I know that I'm allowing them time. I'm actually giving them permission for time. And this is appropriate. Nobody likes to be janked away from what they're doing. Just come now. We all need time to unwind from what we're doing and disconnect from what we're doing to come and do what we're asked to do. So even little people, they need that. So you can say, you have 15 minutes to finish your game, and then I need you to pick up your toys. You have 15 minutes, and older kids know what 15 minutes is. Little people don't know what 15 minutes is, so set a timer. When you hear the timer ding, that's 15 minutes. You can set a timer for older kids too. But then at 15 minutes, you act. You don't yell again. You go into motion, and you act. And that means you go down, and you may have to, little tiny people, you may have to start helping them pick up stuff. But they know that when mom says now, it's now. Older kids, you may go into the room where they're at. And you act. You act now. If you can say, okay, I need you now. Now I need you to come, and I need you to make a salad, and I need you to set the table, and I need you to, and let them know what their responsibilities are. If you see them moving, great. That's super. And you say, boy, I appreciate how quickly you're coming. That's really helpful to me. If they're not moving, if you have one of these children that's not, then you kindly go over, hug them, give them a squeeze, take it away from them, and saying, we will dock this till after dinner, and then you can have it back, and you are in charge of the salad. Come on, sweetheart, I love you. But it's your kind action that makes them move. So we'll talk about a whole bunch of action things next week, but you need to look at yourself because you're creating some of the havoc in your home. And so if you will just think about this action line and where it is in your home and with you right now, then it'll be good. It'll be good. That's one of the things I want you to watch. I need to give you your homework right now, and then I'm going to go into something else that I may get carried away on, and so I want you to. Your homework is Number one, I really want you to watch yourselves. I really want you to watch yourselves. Two, I want you to read a talk by Elder Ballard, and it was in May of 2008. May of 2008, Elder Ballard. And then, I hate doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway, and that is, I want you to write down some questions. I hate it because it takes so much time. But I'm going to give you a list of questions that I want you to ponder on this week as you look at yourself. As you were a 6-year-old, what did you do to get what you wanted? Think about it. What did you do, or what did your parents do, or how did you feel loved as a child? I want you to individually look at your children and notice what things they do that get them in trouble. Like was said earlier, the 15-year-old teases the younger one, so it gets him in trouble. Are they just plain disobedient?
I'm sorry.
Hmm?
Say that one more time.
Look at what individually, how do your children individually get in trouble? Or some of your children don't. But they may be lacking in some of their bank account. I mean, they may be such pleasers that they self-discipline, but it doesn't mean, sometimes those children are so good that they're kind of swept under the rug and we don't pay much attention to them because they're always good. So I want you to notice where each one of your children are individually. I want you to notice their self-esteem. Do you think their self-esteem is high or low or good, you know? What kinds of things do they like? And probably most of all, I want you to notice what you think is one of their divine gifts. Okay? So that's your homework. It's more of a pondering week.
What was the title for Elder Ballard's talk?
I didn't give it to you.
That's why I didn't get it.
That's why you didn't get it. I just know where it is. I can't remember what it's called. I know where it is. It's a conference talk.
Okay, and his daughter's Scottish.
I think that is what it is. Did you already look it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is what it is. It's a great talk. It is good talk. Okay, I want to talk to you for a minute about all of this stuff creates, you can see how this stuff can create misbehavior in children. You know, that some of it we teach them to misbehave, some of it. Every person, whether it's a child or an adult, has basic needs besides food, emotional needs. And one of them is to feel like they belong, that they are accepted, meaning in their individuality. They belong to the group. They're accepted with being individual, and that they're needed in this group. So they need to feel belonging, acceptance, and that they're needed. And they need to feel, as part of feeling belonging, they need to feel loved. They need to feel like they're loved. Now, those are needs that every person has. What we want to do is help them get them in the home. If they don't, they will seek them in a peer group. And that's when the bonding will change. The attachment will change to peers if they don't feel like they're getting this at home. So these are important needs that need to be met in the home, and it's absolutely individual. It doesn't matter that you say as a parent, well, I love them and I think they're uniquely wonderful and they are certainly needed in our home and they do belong here. That's wonderful. But until they feel it, they have to feel that or it doesn't count. It only counts if they feel it. Your truth is not their truth. Their truth is how they feel, and that's what governs them. So you have to create an experience where they feel this at home, or they will go to peers and find that attachment there. So now, little people misbehave for different reasons than teenagers will misbehave. And I would say probably under about 9. It's come down as the years go over, maybe even 8. Little people, I'm going to tell you why they misbehave. And above 9, 8, 9, and above, they misbehave a lot because they've attached to peers. They've made peer attachments, and they're letting the peers set the standard, which means adults are dumb. So a lot of it is that. Some of it is they want independence. They're seeking independence and this feeling of entitlement that they're raised in society today feels like they're entitled to not be under your tutelage and they deserve to be totally independent and you can't tell me what to do. That attitude comes from peers. So if they're forming that, it's part of peer attachment. Adrenaline rush, a lot of things that they might do is just for the fun of it, just the adrenaline rush of it. Some things with some of your kids, it's for popularity, that they are craving popularity. But what's popularity? You go back to the basic needs. It's for them to feel accepted and needed and belong and more important than someone else, competition level. So you can see that these things are forms of not having these goals met. Now in little people, they tend to be demonstrated in different ways. And I want to talk about those for a minute because a lot of you deal with those. The first level of discouragement. Now, I say it's discouragement because discouragement is when they don't feel like this goal of belonging and being needed and being accepted or being met. Now, in little children, they don't understand reality and truth. It's their concept. For example, some little people, and some of you have these in your home, feel like they're only important if they are always, always, always having attention. And if they don't have attention, they don't feel important. That is a misdirected goal. And we have to train them. We have to teach them they're important when they're having attention, but they're also important when they don't have attention. And that's a taught thing. Now, what happens is, and this is the first level, you have this in your chart. This is called when they seek undue attention. When they seek undue attention. And that is whenever you are interacting with them, they're fabulous. They're wonderful. They're cute. They're sweet. They're just so delightful. But you put them down and they start screaming and wailing and gnashing of teeth. Because somehow they only feel like when you're interacting with them, they have value. Let's just take a baby in a high chair. And you're fixing dinner. And so you have a baby in the high chair and you give them some toys to play with and they start pounding on the high chair. And you say, sweetheart, let's not pound. Let's stop pounding. And you look at them and in that moment that you're interacting with them, they're sweet, they're cute, they smile, they giggle, they're just so cute, so fun. But the minute you turn their back, they start pounding again. Or some of these children who you hold them. The minute you put them down, they start screaming. And there's nothing wrong with them. They just want to be held constantly. And so it's this misguided conception that if you're not paying attention to me, then I'm not of value. And therefore, I must demand constant attention. Whining as they get a little older. Drink water. And we do it. We jump right up and give them a drink of water. And we need to teach them. This is a behavior that has to be taught how to get through. And they also have to be taught that when they're not receiving attention, they're important. This frequently will happen as a first child is dethroned by a second child. They become very insecure and they feel like they're in competition for love. So if you look at the diagram that's here, you can identify this as undue attention, because you and a parent, your feelings will be that you're kind of annoyed. You're not angry. It's like, could you just stop the pounding? Just stop it. Just stop whining. Or you're just annoyed. You're not angry. You're not angry. The behavior will always temporarily stop whenever you turn and pay attention to them, because that's their goal. Their goal is to get you to interact with them. So your responsibility, or what you do to parent that, is in the moment, ignore them. So you put the child down and they start to scream, then you walk away. You don't verbalize anything, you just walk away. If they're whining for a drink of water, you may say, when you can use your big girl voice and ask me, I'd love to get you a drink of water. One time. And then they whine at you again, then you walk away. You ignore their demanding behavior, but when they're not demanding behavior, you lavish them with attention. That's when you give attention when they're not behaving inappropriately. And you validate correct behavior. That's the easiest one to correct. The second one is power struggles, which some of you really get into them. Now, the thing about a power struggle is the child only feels like they're important or value or belong if they are in control. So it's when you talk about your son who likes to pit you against each other, man, that is the best feeling in the world, that I got the power. I got the power. You two are fighting. Woohoo, I got the power. They love being in control. But now it's a misdirected goal, because their value isn't when they're in control. Their value is all the time. They always have value. And you're the one that has to teach them that they have value always, not just when they're in control. Now, your reaction to a power struggle is you are angry. You are mad at them right back. And when you're mad and they're mad, boy, you can get into some great debates. And you feel like because you're the parent, you're the adult, you should win. And in the beginning, you will. But as they get older, they wear you down, so you get worse, and they get stronger. By the time they're teenagers, you are in for a ride, a rocky road. So the goal is to help teach them when they're young. And the way you teach them is to withdraw. And in the moment when they're arguing with you and they're intense and I don't care what you say, they're not into learning. So can you discipline them, teaching them correct principles in that moment? No. And so to continue to fight with them in that moment over the rightness or the wrongness of whatever it is they want to do is simply helping them become stronger fighters. It's not teaching them any correct principles because they're not listening. They have one objective when they do that with you. One and one only. And that is to get their own way. Now, if you're fighting back with them with that one and one only objective to get your own way, do you realize there's no, you can't come to an agreement. So in that moment, you as the adult walk away. And I've had parent after parent say, well, doesn't that mean I'm giving in? And the answer is no, you're not giving in. But you have agreed not to fight. So you walk away. Then after they've had cool down time, which may be minutes, it may be an hour, it may be until tomorrow evening. Once they've had cool down time, you come back together and you say, let's discuss this. And talk to me. Tell me what. And that is when nevertheless becomes a magic word. But you can't use that in anger. You can only use that as you come back to your discussions, and then you let them vent. See, they're still red. So let them vent, and they will give you all of the dialogue that they've had the night before. Only this time you're not fighting back. And you listen to them. You say, nevertheless, I don't feel good about this sleepover. Then vent. You say, I know you're frustrated. I can see your frustration. Nevertheless, I don't feel good about this. They really don't want all of your reasoning, usually. Occasionally, they really want to know why, but usually they don't. They just want their own way. So be sensitive. When you go into a power struggle and you are enforcing all your reasoning on them, that's not what they want to know. The bottom level is, and really what we're talking about, these are temper tantrums. These are little people with temper tantrums. So with their power struggles. And it goes up as they get older. They just get more creative in how they throw their little temper tantrums. And could I tell you that some of you still throw temper tantrums? But as adults, some of you are good at yelling in a controlled way. But most often, adult women temper tantrums come in the form of the silent treatment.
I did that in high school.
Bottom line is, if you're giving somebody the silent treatment, you still can't resolve an issue because you're not willing to talk or listen. So that's just an adult temper tantrum. It's just 2-year-old behavior in an adult. So the last level for little people is revenge. And this is when you have a little person who their desire is to hurt you. I hate you. I hate you. I'm going to go live somewhere else. I'm going to run away. I hate you. I hate you. And some of us just, you know, that's just a knife to the heart. And we take it so personally. We tend to, we take offense. We get hurt, and sometimes we tend to retaliate. The problem with when they reach this level is that we can very easily break their spirit. And so we need to be kind with them, acknowledge that they're hurting, but still hold them very, very accountable. Still hold them accountable for what it is that needs to happen. You need to really focus on the reasons why you like that child. Because sometimes when they're into revenge and they're out to hurt you, sometimes it's really hard for us to feel loving, kind feelings towards them. And it becomes difficult. So focus on trying to remember why you like them and even praying to know why you like them. Sometimes you forgot.
The running away part reminded me. I was actually a really good kid, but when I was 9, I specifically, I don't remember having very many disputes with my mom actually, but this, when I was 9, I threatened I was going to run away. And I was like, fine, I'm just going to go live at my friend's house because I didn't like something that I wasn't getting my way for. And I threatened I was going to run away. And my mom said, okay, let's go get the luggage right now and I'll help you pack. And she went downstairs and started just dumping all of my drawers, like not even organized, dumping them in a pack. And that made me so mad. And I realized I didn't know oh my gosh, she's like kicking me out now. This isn't working now. What am I gonna do? And she sent me out the door. And like 20 minutes later, I came back in, and that's when I got my. After a cool down, that's when my mom talked and was like, "That was really stupid of you, wasn't it? That was not. That wasn't gonna get you anywhere. What was that gonna do?" But I remember, oh my gosh, my mom went downstairs and got the luggage and started throwing up. Okay, I'll send you out.
That's good. Be careful if you do that because you might break the child, but that's great. In closing, I want to share with you a quote from President Uchtdorf. This was in that talk, Forget Me Not. Do you remember that talk that he gave? I love this. And the reason I like this as parenting is because I get the feeling that you come to the class seeking what to do and how to do it because you want to be good parents. And you really have a righteous desire to know what and how, particularly when we're talking about discipline. So particularly this week and next week, I feel like that's what you're seeking. And my goal is to brush upon those points, the what and the how. But what I want to stay with you is the why. We teach discipline because we want to teach discipleship. We teach discipline. We want to help them correct behavior simply because it helps them to develop and put on the divine nature. We want to help them yearn for and have the desire to become Christ-like, not just because it's a rule in our home. So, yes, the what and the how are important. But what I want to pierce your heart is the why. The why. And this is what he said, President Uchtdorf. While understanding the what and the how of parenting is necessary, the eternal fire and majesty of parenting springs from the why. When we understand why our Father in heaven has given us this pattern for living, when we remember why we committed to making it a foundational part of our lives, then parenting ceases to become a burden and instead becomes a joy and a delight. It becomes precious and sweet. I bear you my testimony. That is true because that parenting is the why or the heart of Godhood. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the chance that we've had to come today and listen to Sister Tanner's words and the words of those around us. We're grateful for her preparation and her wisdom. And we pray that we may be able to put into practice the things that we've learned today. We're grateful for thy example to us of perfect parenting and pray that we may follow that example and keep an eternal perspective as we go throughout this journey. We're grateful for the words of our living prophets and pray that we may put those into action and that we may remember the why. We love you and pray for these things in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.